use QR codes to find out more about their food. And so what you have is an iPhone app or an Android app, and you walk into the grocery store and you see something you might be interested in, and you scan the little QR code in the meat department, and it says, oh, that piece of meat was grown in Kentucky, and it was grown in a sustainable fashion, and it happens to have 47 carbon credits associated with it. And if you buy that piece of meat, you know, you're going to get a couple of coupon credits on your loyalty program to this farmer that happens to be Russell Hendrick. So all of a sudden, we have connected the consumer. I say we. Bill has connected the consumer all the way back to the producer. And what we've done is integrated the channel to bypass the big four, so to speak, and put the consumer in front. And the consumer votes with his dollars. And in the future that we're imagining now, there may be different ways to differentiate your products so that you receive a fair value in the chain that you should receive from the work that you do. And this technology is here, and we can do it. And Bill has got it works slick.
Okay, I have to ask a question because I actually am the consumer, right? So let me ask this question. If you're talking about packaging that has the ability to be dynamic in the sense that you can gain information off of a packaging, I still want that level of truthiness though. Like as a mom at the grocery store, like I still want that skin in the game written on the label. I know what I'm getting. So why would I want to shift my thinking into something that was a little bit less static?
Well, there's only so much room on that label. That space is, and if you, again, I come from the meat side of it, and we were always trying to figure out how the hell to get more information on that label. And the thing is, the government controls what goes on that label to a large extent, and now this QR code, as Rob was saying, really, it opens up the opportunity to give a lot more information about that product. I mean, real information that the consumer really wants. And again, there's tons of surveys. And I mean, think about that. This isn't new. I mean, we're talking about it today, but I mean, these surveys have been done by universities and the industry over the last 10 years. So for 10 plus years, we have known that the consumer wants a smaller steak. We've known that. So what do? We make that sucker as big as possible. And we sell it. And it reminds me of the big three automakers back in the 70s or whenever the hell that was. It's like, hey, but got to watch out. They're starting to sell smaller cars. That hell they are. We're going to keep selling them big. And that's, so my point is, we don't listen to the consumer. Again, we really don't as an industry, as the meat industry anyway. And the government tells you exactly what the nutrition and the handling and all that kind of stuff. So there's not enough information in there to give the consumer the information that we really know that they want because they keep telling us for the last 10, 15 years.
Is it accurate to say that we've gotten to this point where we're at now because we do have such a large food system where we're trying to maintain every single parameter of the food system exactly the same? So Bernie, when we talk about what you're doing with Better Fed Foods, being able to measure the different nutrient qualities of the product, so if I hear this discussion properly, if we're able to differentiate the nutritional profile of the meat that's being produced, Bill's company will be able to utilize the packaging and the QR code so that that information travels to the consumer a lot faster. Is that pretty accurate?
That's 100% correct. And let me give you just a little more background. I was in the meat business for 30 years in a town called Alma, Kansas. We still own Alma Cheese. but we built the meat plant, didn't build it, but took it over. I got tired of selling ground beef and losing money on it and making a penny here and there. And so we started cooking meat, making value-added meat, same thing that Russell's doing, and I hope to meet Russell, and all of that stuff, okay? So then we came up, we were in basically the food service business. We're selling to restaurants and institutions. One of them came to us, and they wanted us to make pre-cooked roast in a portion control, and said, that's crazy. How much would you pay for that? And they said they'd pay extra for it. And then it sold so well that they came back and said, we're going to take it to retail. And that's back when Dillon's was still Dillon's and not Kroger. And so we said, no, we're going to do that ourselves. So we took that to the store. We fought like crazy. I mean, the butcher said, you're not selling that crap in my store because I cut meat. The meat manager says, get the hell out of the store. So we go talk to the store manager, and they go, what do you want to do? And so we came out, and I thought I was smart enough that different size families, we needed different size roasts. So we had them anywhere from 1.5 pound pot roast is what we were making. They'd all forgot that Dad's still sitting on his ass at home. Mom's got 2 jobs, you know. She's working. She still takes care of the kids. And she was felt guilty for going to McDonald's and feeding the kids. When they found out they could buy the entree and just add the side dish, it just went like wildfire. But what we had to do to get it through the stores, Dillon's would run it on the ad, and the meat department would leave it in the cooler because they didn't want to sell it. So then they come back and said, how about making that even weight every one the same? And says, yeah, Lee, how much would you pay for that? So we went from pennies per pound to cents per pound and sold like crazy. That's where Bill and I got together. He put it in thousands of stores. Today you can buy that virtually anywhere in the United States. It's got Hormel all over it, and they sell it like crazy, okay? So we removed guilt, okay? What Jessica just said is, okay, if you go talk to the mom, housewife, today, they got all kinds of questions. You know, what the hell do you mean is antibiotic free? What is antibiotic free? The law, like Bill said, we can't sell meat with antibiotics in it. You can't sell dairy with antibiotics in it. It's all antibiotic free, okay? And stuff. Then when you tell them antibiotic free means that if that animal gets sick after you've had it on feed for 129 days, you have to give it a shot. You've lost $100 and some bucks, and that animal's they go, what the hell is that all about? Or you cannot give them a shot and they just die. They cannot believe that, see? So that's why, like Jimmy said, and so I worked for years to get this trademark, and it really isn't, it's the story of tying dirt, excuse me, Bill, dinner to dirt. I always get that screwed up. And yeah, but we're done with that. We got the audience now. But they would pay for that value added. And when Hormel came, now one more thing, the reason this affects you folks is the day after we signed the contract with Hormel, and the big four they weren't near as big as they are now. That was in 2000, okay? And there was still some competition, damn little, okay? So I probably had 6 suppliers. I called every one of them, and I said, and we'd been buying millions of dollars worth of meat from them. And I said, starting next week, we're only going to buy 1 cut of meat, the clod. So what I want to do is I'm going to take my buyer and make him do something else in my company. And I want to buy semi-loads of clods. They got to be here at 6 o'clock in the morning, or we're going to fine you $300 an hour for not having them here. And I want to buy them on last week's average price. Every one of them but one said, what? They said, what the hell? Who do you think you are? And I said, well, I think I'm the guy that takes the pile of clods you got and goes like that. And so Swift was the only one, which today's JBS, they were the only one. The next year, every one of them said, could we get your business? Because when we started using 15 loads of clods a week in Alma, Kansas, and other people started copying that, as you know today, if you follow any of the market, there's times a year where the clod brings more than the sirloin. That has one word, demand.
It's all about the consumer. It's what the consumer wants. And if we have a mechanism, which we do now, thanks to the internet, and thanks to the applications on the iPhone, and thanks to Apple and those folks, we can take our products from the farm to the consumer. And we can do it in a way where we can generate new revenue, and it's just beginning, and that's part of the vision that we're looking at today.
Right. Well, thank you so much, Rob and Bill and Bernie. And, you know, like Rob said, this is the visionary conversation that we're having right now. So my head is kind of blown right now. There was a lot of topics that were brought up. And I definitely think that if we always do what we've always done, we're always going to get what we always got. And so maybe having some of these conversations that are, hard to really have right now, I think is good for all of us. And so, we do have time for a question if anybody has one. And yeah, go ahead. Oh, go ahead.
This is for Bill. You touched on something with Wise Up Food about the QR code and the information that you can provide goes way beyond what you can fit on a label, in particular a meat label. It's pretty minimal. In the scope of your vision for moving forward and for Wise Up Food, is there any consideration of influencing label laws? And I don't mean from a marketing perspective. I mean from dirt, going backwards actually, from dirt to dinner, and what really actually goes into the production of really quality, measurable quality food.
Mm-hmm. That's a great question. So, yeah, I think that we're involved right now with a company that is working on using a new technology to actually make beef production, or more specifically feeding beef, more sustainable. And as part of that, and again, they brought Wise Up in to try and help tell that story. But in doing that, we're actually working with USDA on trying to create the first sustainable beef PVP, process verified program through USDA. So that's been it's a real, but it's kind of like working with a big packer or whatever. It's the government is always there to help us, right? But it's a real learning lesson for us, and we are actually thrilled to be involved in it, because if we can accomplish that, and we will accomplish it, it really does. It sets new standards and new bars for not just that particular deal, but when you talk about actually tracing things back through and tracking, and being able to verify what really is going on, that something really is organic or something really is grass-fed or whatever. I think that so I'm really happy that we're involved with the USDA on this. There's a lot of days I'm not, by the way, but I think that I think it's great for us to be involved in that. Does that answer your?
I have to ask this question. Independent processing meat packing plants are really tied up. They're full. They're packed. You can't hardly get a steer processed. They're scheduled for 12, 18 months. So how do you double or triple or quadruple production in the marketplace from your perspective?
So I'll just give you my 2 cents on it. Again, we're fortunate to be working with a couple companies that are really trying to go regional and to put some regional facilities in. One is here in Nebraska, but there's a couple on the East Coast. So in all of that, I think that's the beauty of what we're talking about in this session, and that is the paradigm has got to change. It has got to be broken, because it makes zero sense anymore to take those cattle from Florida, bring them out here, and feed them, and then process them and ship it back to Florida. And you're seeing more and more people actually start to stand up and say, wait a minute, why don't we just figure out a way to feed them environmentally, sustainably, over there, on the East Coast. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I don't disagree with those comments that transportation costs adds to carbon issues and adds to a whole lot of other issues the consumer doesn't want us to deal with anymore in today's world. But the underlying issue is who's going to own those processing plants? The Nebraska operation, the farmers are putting their own money on the table to do that plant. So are we going to, as a group of farmers, are we going to finally get to the point that we're going to understand we're going to have to take back agriculture? At the end of the day, that's the bottom line. We have allowed 4 processors to effectively control 80+% of the beef production. We have left just a few processors control the poultry business.
Yeah.
And we have to take back agriculture. So it's going to be a point, at some point, where we as farmers are going to have to put our dollars, if you will, on the table and take it back. But then you have the next problem in a cooperative marketplace, and that is an untrained, non-knowledgeable board of directors that runs these companies and from time to time screw them up. So how do we deal with these issues? These are issues we have to deal with.
Well, I like that question a lot because it really is almost the template for what PrairieFood is about. We're a distributive process instead of a centralized process. And in my vision, when I look at that market segment, I see a processor residing wherever the feeders are. And I see it in a smaller scale, more automated type of plant where the product is actually shipped direct to the consumer. But that's my long-term vision. Getting from here to there is not easy, but we have to take it back if we're going to control our own destinies, and that's what we should be able to do.
I would agree with that comment wholly. I traveled from Madison, Wisconsin to come to this particular conference, and I have been working on this very topic since 2016, and I've met with a lot of major entities across the entire food industry on that particular topic. So it is going to take some participation by agriculture, farmers at the level of getting their dollar and their checkbooks out in order to make this happen on scale. We can do a lot. 3-4% of the ag business can convert, probably. But we're talking about needing to move 35-40% of the business. That's what we need to do in order to change the paradigm. The farmer's not going to get a good share of that $1,000 that these guys are making on us until we control 35-50% of the beef business going through our hands directly to consumers. That's what it's going to take in order to get those guys in line and not rip us off.
I agree. Thank you so much for joining us from that far distance. I appreciate it. So I think a great way to think about this is, how do we wrap our minds around all of the conversation? I think that COVID exposed the intricate issues that our food supply has. I don't think we'd be having this conversation right now if it weren't for what we've already experienced. I think we do have an awakened consumer base. Do they always have it right? No, I don't think so. But it does sound like that we are rallying the troops on the ground here to make it happen. So Shelby, yeah.
My question is about your Wise Up Foods. Curiosity. I downloaded your app. It's very exciting to look at. But what's important, in my opinion, is that consumers are directly relatable to the growers, the producers. So when you scan a QR code in a store, that's great, but if you're sitting at home and you're scrolling that app, can you see direct to consumer producers who are marketing on their own and not through a big store?
Great question. And actually, Kevin raised it earlier today when we were talking over here. And I think that's the one thing I've learned in the last year and a half, and Sarah, you would, I think, agree with this, is that whatever we have planned, it doesn't work. And I say that in jest only, I mean, we plan and God smiles kind of thing. I think that connecting, figuring out a way, first of all, doing it through the brands, the manufacturers and whatnot who are supplying, and I'm talking about the bigger guys who are supplying the retail and the food service channel. I mean, that's where we're at right now. But the question earlier today from Kevin is, would you be willing to work with us at this level if we're dealing directly with that consumer, as Russell talked about earlier today? And the answer is, hell yeah. I mean, we've got to figure out just how to do it, but the beauty of the Wise Up app that Sarah has created is that all of that is, you can modify, you can play with, whatever that message is that's important, and those pillars of information that you toggle between, all of that can be modified and adjusted to tell your story. For example, if you're buying a quarter from Kevin or a half from, so how do you cut it? How do you, and it's probably going to a processor and whatnot, but all of that we need to incorporate into our Wise Up app, which, quite frankly, we didn't even think about a year and a half ago when we started down this road. We were just thinking that the consumer wants all this information and nobody wants to give it to them. We'd like to figure out how to do that. But no, again, the paradigm, as somebody said, needs to shift. And the more we can connect you with the consumer, the more leverage you have, and the more power you're going to end up owning. And that's why I think every meeting going forward, let's put this out to a vote. I think it needs to start with the consumer because you all can control it. You've got the supply, which again, in this, COVID has taught us the supply matters. The supply chain matters, and you own that. I mean, you've got all the power, but they don't want you to have that. And they will make it really hard, and they'll make it really hard for us. And we know that. And Bernie's taught us well on how to push back on that. So anyway, did I answer?
All right, folks. Well, I think with that, I'm going to let Rob bring it home, but I want to make the observation that we're talking about circular economy. We're talking about stacking operations. We're talking about increasing nutrient density.